Hi everyone, welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Laurie and I am super excited today to be joined by my new friend Daphnée, who we actually met. This is so random. She reached out to me on Instagram. Then I happened to be going to Montreal, which is where she lives. So we met for coffee in Montreal. But then when we were in Montreal, I didn't know anything about her. When we were in Montreal, we find out that we actually have at least a dozen mutual friends in BC in the mental health community. So we're sitting across the country realizing that we've done all of this similar stuff in BC and never met each other. So random. Anyways, Daphnée, I'm so excited to chat with you because we had such a good conversation over coffee that day and we are going to have so much to talk about.
Yes, so much.
So much. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself generally to start us off?
Yeah, so I'm Daphnée. My pronouns are she, her. I currently live in Montreal, and I love golden retriever puppies. I want to adopt one. I, of course, am really involved in the mental health community. I love traveling, reading, writing, and in terms of work, right now I am supporting teenage girls in a boarding school setting, so that's a lot of fun.
A lot of fun and so stressful.
Yeah.
We were talking about that a little bit when we were met, and I was like, that sounds like the most high intensity job ever with like so many emotions running around, and good for you for doing it because I'm sure you're such a good support for them.
Yeah, and I think you were saying during our coffee chat that how when the girls are having challenges, you get so many opportunities to teach them skills informally. Yeah. But I don't do it on purpose. It's just that when you have a crying kid in front of you, it just
totally
kicks in.
Yeah, and skills that their parents probably don't even know. So it's so great that you are able to do that. Okay, let's start with your journey growing up and leading to a BPD diagnosis. So what was your childhood like?
My childhood was, I call it a perfect childhood because I had everything. And this is something that obviously people will be like, well, you can't have had such a good childhood and develop BPD. But I'm I think I personally just remember a lot of good memories, basically. Very typical upbringing, play sports after school, dance lessons. I never really experienced poverty or anything like that. So I think I have really good memories until the age of 12 or 13, and then it was just a shit show. There was such a clear divide of I have this happy bubble of my childhood of just trip to Disney World and all of that stuff, and then it's just depression, anxiety, BPD stuff. So
interesting. So you said 12 or 13?
Yeah, 12 or 13 is when I really started struggling.
So what?
I think most people do.
Yeah, mine. I certainly that's when I started getting meds and stuff. It was I still had a lot of issues previous to that, but that was definitely a turning point. So was there something that precipitated that turning point, or was it just puberty and high school?
The biggest change was that I had to move. And so I had to move from a very stable environment where I had a lot of friends and stuff, and then my dad got a new job, and then when I changed school it didn't go well at all, and then I stopped all my hobbies. It was just one thing after another. So I think for me, I just remember, I think grade 9 when I was was probably the hardest year, the year that I was okay, there's something wrong. Yeah,
totally. And what did something wrong look like in your life? You said depression, symptoms, not wanting to do your normal activities and that kind of stuff. But was there anything else that was going on for you?
Yeah, lots of anxiety, lots of that's when a lot of the friendship things happened in terms of developing those fears of abandonment that are so typical of BPD.
So typical.
And just, mostly depression and anxiety, I think, were the big things. And just starting to hold into my feelings and not sharing with the people around me how I was doing, and just really developing that everything's okay, put a smile on your face kind of persona, I guess. So a lot of people actually didn't know throughout my high school years that I was struggling as much as I did, and I only told them around graduation.
Interesting.
And I remember people being oh, I never could have guessed, you were just the happiest person at school. So that was really interesting to see how you maybe see yourself, and then how other people see you, especially during a teenager when you're a teenager.
And how well you can hide what you're really feeling, just to kind of like
Yeah.
blend in.
I think like I guess in recent years they would call it like high functioning depression.
Right.
I don't know how I feel about that term, and that's a whole other conversation. But
Totally.
just like as a reference, like I think if I had to describe, it was just kind of like, you know, I had like straight A's and I had friends and I had like all of those things, but like on the inside I was like, oh God, no.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. And what were your parents supportive and around?
So my parents actually didn't know much until things like went really severe. And so I never talked about them. I never talked to them about what was going on. But then in grade 9 there was this one time where I was talking to my mom actually recently about this, and she was like, "Remember when you know, were yelling at me and like slamming doors?" I'm like, "I never did that." And she's like, "Yes, you did." And so she actually brought me to her GP, and that's when she had kind of, you know, she had noticed things that like I didn't even notice, right? And then that's when I kind of started the journey of like counseling and medication, and that was like the start, I guess, like the big moment. But
Totally.
the thing is that I actually think that like psychoeducation is so important because at the time nobody like explained to me what depression and anxiety was, and nobody had told me that like antidepressants were like a super popular thing. So I remember going back home and like googling like antidepressants, and I felt like the only kid in the world who was on that, you know? And it was just like later on in life where I was like, okay, they're like all my friends are on meds.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, I could probably count fewer people. Like I could probably count fewer people who aren't on antidepressants.
I agree.
At this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like, I just remember thinking that like formed such a core belief about mental health for me and like the stigma and stuff. And I just think if someone had sat down with me and really laid it all on me and like even explain what depression and anxiety was, then maybe I would not feel so like that idea of like being on meds, like being weak or whatever. Like I would have internalized those things. So.
And you wouldn't have felt maybe that you had to hide it as much as you were because other people are going through it, which again, beauty that you're in the career you're in, because you can be that person for kids that, you know, to say like, this is normal. This sucks. I get it. This is like a really uncomfortable feeling, but this isn't abnormal.
Yeah.
So then BPD, when did that come into the picture?
Honestly, I don't really have a moment in terms of, I think it was just like in the, like, you know, like when you're a teenager and you like read things online or whatever. And I just remember writing something about BPD and just like it resonating with me, but like I didn't like, it was never really something that was brought, like at least until I was like, I was diagnosed at the age of 20. So from like this moment I started struggling till then, there was never like a mental health professional who like sat me down and said like, I think you have BPD. It was more just like I was struggling with a bunch of stuff and nobody could figure out what it was. And I think that's a pretty common experience, you know, that you like, is it anxiety? Is it OCD? Is it bipolar? Like all of those things. But I clearly remember like when I learned about BPD, I had the moment where I was like, oh, this really like validates my experience. So I knew that it was accurate, not necessarily accurate, but like it resonated with me, right? And it's actually interesting because my most recent therapist has actually questioned that, and it's like led to like this weird thing where I was like, oh my God, what? But in a way it might just be because I'm so far away in my recovery that I might like not, but we can talk about that.
But there's like there's like a self identity piece of I mean, if somebody said, oh, just kidding, 15 years ago we misdiagnosed you, you've never had BPD, I would feel very shaken by that. Because I fully believe that I have BPD and have been told by many professionals, right? So I can totally see where if you start getting questioned about it, it would feel strange. Okay, so I mean, what I really, really want to get into with you is your experience with DBT and various other therapies. So maybe, we're going to talk a lot about something called radically open DBT, dialectic behavior therapy, in a bit. And I'm so stoked about that. But do you want to tell us about what your treatment journey has looked like? So obviously we talked meds when you were in high school, and then kind of what other treatments had you experienced before you found radically open?
Yeah, interestingly enough, like a lot of people will try like CBT before DBT, but just because of the way that things unfolded for me, I actually just went straight to DBT.
Nice.
So, it was kind of like the first time I heard about DBT was I had a psychiatrist who recommended this workbook called Don't Let Your Emotions Run Your Life, based on
Okay,
DBT.
yeah.
And I remember reading that and feeling like, oh my God, I get it. This is so helpful. Like, I want to do this therapy. And then, as you know, a few years later, I was diagnosed, and then I was able to do like a full comprehensive DBT program. So it was just before that, like I was on a wait list. I like went and like read Marshall Linehan's manual, and like I really,
You're a
really
nerd like me.
yeah, I basically like read everything and anything I could about DBT, and then I started treatment when I was, I think 20, and I did it for a year, and then my therapist left, and then I got another DBT therapist, which I saw for 2 years, and then
And was this full program?
Yeah, it was the full program.
And then so your therapist left, so you found another one through the same place, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it helping?
Yeah, it was so like I don't know. I don't know about you, but like I think for me, when I learned DBT, I had the issue, like I just fell in love with it like so
me too.
much. And like I don't know if you're like you almost like live and breathe DBT in a way. And like I remember like showing up to my support group, be like, I learned this skill this week and this is amazing. And it was just this very like life-changing thing.
Sometimes I feel like I'm in a cult. I don't know if I'm a leader of the cult or if I'm just in a cult. And if I'm the leader, that is unintentional. But I live and breathe DBT. Mm-hmm. And it's very similar, to be fair. I mean, I work in the substance use field. There's people who like live and breathe like 12-step programs like NAA. True. So I'm like, okay, like I think it's very similar. But yeah, every once in a while I'm like, am I in a cult? Because I love this so much that this is maybe not normal.
Yeah, like I remember like being in skills class, like doing all the homework and participating. And I remember like, doing my diary card like religiously. And I had like DBT stickers and DBT merch and like a sweater. It was just like this entire thing. So at the time when I was doing DBT, like the first year of DBT, I was actually like just kind of half in school, half working. Like it wasn't a very good time for me to be kind of living life. And so, but yeah, I remember just, it was kind of like being at school in a way, and just, I don't even know how to describe the process. I don't even know if there's like words to like describe what it's like when you finally get a skill, and then you feel so confident and you feel like, oh my God, like you feel like in charge of your life.
Totally. Like you have something to actually help you work through a situation that for 20 something years or more of your life, you have been at a loss to manage, is a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, it's a beautiful feeling. It's
a beautiful feeling.
I remember too, like, I think I remember also telling people that like, it takes a lot of time, and it's not like you're going to do the skill once and then you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to do it all the time.
God, no.
And I remember we were learning mindfulness of current thought, and I was like really upset because I was not getting it. And my therapist kept being like, just, you have to trust me on this. And so after a whole month of practicing, I finally had that moment where I just noticed a thought, and it was like an epiphany. Like I was like, oh my God, this works. And so I had a lot of like little moments like that where I was like, oh, I really believe in the treatment. And I think that makes a difference, right? Like, if you hate DBT and you're not wanting to do it, and like I think like you have to kind of buy in at some point, like
totally. Especially when you're first learning it I mean, I would go and 90% of the time I had done all my homework, done all my diary cards, done whatever. And then there was a lot of people who hadn't. And it's like, fair enough, but you got to put the work in too, right? And I'm not saying that's easy. That's hard as shit. But you really, you have to be bought in. It's not like, it's kind of like passing a class in school. Like you might pass a class in school, but if you don't try, you're probably not going to remember anything or like learn it. And I mean, I did DBT when I was like 19 or 20, and I'm 32. So I've been practicing these skills and incorporating them into my life for 12 plus years.
Yeah.
And I am still learning new things and making new connections between skills. And I think about this stuff all the time. I talk about it daily. I have every resource that's out there, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, you can still make new connections between DBT skills even 12 years in. I mean, I'm sure even, you know, Marsha Linehan probably thought about new things for 40 years after she developed the program. Well, I'm so glad.
As a side note, have you seen the new DBT manual, the DBT Next Steps?
No, I have not.
Oh my God. So
it's brand new, right?
It's like brand new. I haven't read it myself, but I was like on Guildford Press, like looking at their new arrivals. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I like this. And then it was like, basically they have like these new dilemmas for like stage 3 and 4. Because they're saying that DBT really addresses like stage 1 and 2 kind of thing. Anyway, highly recommend. It got published in August, and I've been so busy working that I haven't had a chance to read it. But yeah, it's like the next DBT manual, whatever. There's like new skills and handouts and stuff. Like it's a whole thing.
I did know that they were updating it, and I'm very happy that they were updating it because it's old as hell. That's awesome. I love that you're just browsing the Guildford Press website. That's fucking hilarious to me.
The other one is the new Harbinger. They have great resources too. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to look it up. So funny. No, I have not read it yet, but I will for sure. Okay, so I'm so glad DBT was beneficial for you. Were there any other types of treatment that were helpful? I can't remember if you did other things. You did like MBT,
parts
right?
Work.
Oh, parts work. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that was
explain
like
parts work to us.
Oh my God, parts work is amazing. So I basically did comprehensive DBT for about 3 years, and during that time things went okay, but they weren't okay in some ways. Like I was still very much like having multiple crises every few weeks, you know. And so it came to the point where I was like, maybe DBT has done everything that DBT can do for me. And I think I just need a new approach because this isn't like, I'm not getting better. And so as much as DBT helped, it wasn't like the psychologist I went to after said that like the end of therapy, the end of DBT is like the start of therapy. Like he was like, you just need to, you know, you stabilize and everything, but like you haven't really, you're not at that like life worth living to like for it to be sustained, basically. So parts work is basically I did something called trauma informed stabilization treatment, which is a mix of like internal family systems and like somatic therapy. So basically it's like we have these parts, and my psychologist always described parts as in they're kind of like emotional tendencies or emotional responses. So you would have like the fight, flee, fawn, and attach, which is the last one is the one that people don't really usually think of because you know you think of like fight, flight. And then so it was like really interesting because whenever I would have like an unjustified emotion or thought it was something, we would say that like this is a part of you. And I think I really like parts work because it just allowed me, like, you know, when you have like so many conflicting emotions and stuff like that. And I think parts work was just able to do that. So basically we have these like responses like flee, for example. Like flee can be really adaptive in so many situations. Like, you know, the classic, like there's a bear or there's a tiger or a lion chasing after you. But then my psychologist conceptualizes as in when those parts, when there's trauma and like a lot of adversity, those parts get like swollen. And so these parts now will lead you to like, you know, maybe like self-harm or suicide. The parts are always trying to help. And I think that's the one thing that I really got from parts where it was that every single thing, like emotion, thought, reaction, like even the ones that like don't make sense to me, they all are trying to protect me. Like, and that was like really big in terms of helping me like just like accept myself a bit more. Like, okay, this part's actually trying to help. And so instead of like a diary card, I would do a parts log. So you would notice like, let's say you have like, I don't know, like an urge to like like emotional eating, for example. And so it would be like, okay, what part is active? So for me, that would be like flee. And then you would say, what do you think the part is like? It's reading the past. And so what do you think is happening? And so for in my case, it was like, oh, I'm alone. If I'm alone, I'm going to die. And so then you would say, well, how is the part trying to help? And it's trying to make me feel like lessen my distress. And then it's just about like showing those parts of yourself that like, okay, you know, you this is reality, like you're reading history. And so it was just really cool. I don't know how to like really describe, like it's more like my psychologist also did a bit like psychodynamic therapy, so I think that like came
It all
into
kind
play.
of
I think it was like a
meshes
little
together.
bit of everything, but I would say that parts work was like, as someone with BPD, like it helped a lot, like and not necessarily the parts where they say like, you know, when you, I don't know how many, like internal family system is like you imagine like the 12-year-old part of yourself and that person has like an outfit and doing that. Like for me it was more parts were just more like pure emotions, like intense emotions. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
And that's funny that you say that, because when you first said something about like, you know, they have a picture and, you know, they're wearing this, they're wearing this. I have a really hard, I can't visualize things. It's like a thing. I can't, there's a word for it now that I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, there's like a word for being unable to visualize anything. And so I have a really hard time with certain components of therapy if they require visualization. And so right when you said that, I started shutting down because I went, oh, well, I can't do it then. But if you can think about it in a different way, like I can't do EMDR as normal, because normally EMDR requires a visual of something, of a past experience. And same with like a lot of mindfulness based practices. I can't do a lot of them. I have to modify them quite a bit. Anyways, just an interesting thought. But no, the parts thing is it's interesting. I know a number of people who have benefited from it.
That's
for
good.
those of you who have listened to this podcast for a while, I'm just trying to think in November, an episode came out with our friend Kat, which is a very interesting story around parts work, because they actually also have been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. And so they actually do have multiple components of themselves and they're doing parts work. So it's actually, that one's a really interesting, like kind of strange situation, but it's really cool and they've benefited a lot from that. Okay, and then somatic experiencing therapy.
Well, I think for me, I think the part that DBT actually kind of missed for me was that I wasn't really able to experience my emotions in sessions as much as DBT encourages that. I think that the psychologist that I went to afterwards, who was also trained in DBT, we were able to do a lot of exposure to unjustified emotions, like core shame and stuff. So I guess let me back up a little bit. So in DBT, they often ask you to like, you know, where do you feel this in your body? Like focus on your sensations. But for me, I would just like shut down. Like I am not feeling this anywhere. But my psychologist was very creative and he came up with these exercises where I could actually feel the emotion. So for example, shame, a lot of unjustified shame, where I would disclose things that were really shameful. And then I would get the experience of being accepted and like my shame just like was validated, and just realizing that like it was not justified. Like it did not reflect what was going on in reality. And so then my shame would just like go down. It would just like decrease. Like it was crazy how much just being exposed to these emotions, like even like 2 or 3 times. And I was like, well, if I can disclose all these embarrassing things to my therapist and still feel accepted and still feel not ashamed of those, like you can put me in any situation.
Right.
So I think that was it was parts work and then exposure to emotion. Yeah.
And if I'm gathering this correctly based on our previous conversation, and sometimes I'm like, oh man, I wish we hadn't had a previous conversation, because I don't want to miss things for the audience, right? But okay, I have personally, and I think we resonated with this a little bit. And I think this is kind of what you're saying, is I have personally felt like DBT did so much to me for managing my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes, and maybe this is probably a combination of meds and DBT, I think I overcorrected. So I was too emotional, too extreme. I mean, I'm still extreme, but like too emotional. And then
Yeah.
did DBT and it went like, this is where you're trying to get to. And I went here and I'm overly controlled about my emotions and I just don't experience them.
Yeah.
I mean, I experience them, but I'm very much on the other side of that.
Keeping it together, keeping a tight leash on your emotions.
Yeah. And so I'm guessing that experience of feeling your emotions, because when similar to you, I think when I go to therapy, I'm often dissociated as fuck. The minute something comes up, I'm like, no, I'm just chilling. And my counselor's like, are you even here right now? I'm like, I'm just vibing. And then she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm so tired. I think I could fall asleep right now. And she's like, but it's the middle of the afternoon. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. She's like, were you tired 5 minutes ago? I'm like, no, but here I am. Like, I could pass out. She's like, okay, well, you're dissociated. So I love that idea of exposing yourself to those emotions, although that sounds very hard to do from a like pulling emotions up perspective. But this is, I think, where we lead to radically open DBT.
Yes, that's what I'm doing right now. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Literally. I think, so, I think, well, okay, for people out there, like, I know it's not a clinical term, but when you think of BPD, and I know there's like stereotype, but when you think of BPD, you think of people who are very like outwardly emotional. Like, you will really see when they're upset. You will really, everything is
anger is externalized.
Yeah, exactly. It's very external. And so when they talk about like on like Reddit and stuff, they talk about quiet BPD. A lot of people I find on these chats will relate to the idea of like keeping your feeling inwards. Like, you feel intense emotions, definitely, but you won't, like, you'll smile when you're in distress instead of kind of
people don't
like
see the distress because, and they're not as they're not as distressed by your distress because you're keeping it to yourself and bottling it up, essentially.
Yeah, exactly, bottling it up. And so even though you have intense emotions, you might not necessarily express them. It might be more of an inward thing. And I think that's when the two coping styles, so over control or under control, when you think of like, quote, classic BPD, you would think of someone who's very under control. People who benefit from RO-DBT or radically open DBT are people who have an over control style. So they will often struggle with like eating disorders or treatment resistant depression and other things. But even though I have a diagnosis of BPD
and OCD probably,
and OCPD as well,
yeah,
I think just because of like some aspects of my personality, like I think I'm a very over control person. And I think that over control, like, I like to give examples, like very being a perfectionist would be a really big one, or like you smile through distress, and instead of like you have like almost like a over tolerance for distress, or like everything will be more like the self-harm won't be as obvious, it'll be kept a secret, it'll be more controlled. And also like over control people are people who really need to like chill out, play, be non-productive. That's like the big thing for me right now is like just reducing like the people pleasing, the overworking, the perfectionism, and just kind of like really learning not to take life too seriously, basically. And I think the main difference is that in DBT, we often talk about a life worth living, and in RO-DBT, we talk about a life worth sharing, which is kind of like really emphasizes community and things like that. So I actually learned about RO-DBT through like when I was doing regular DBT, someone mentioned the word, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go and like Google what this is, and I just like fell in love with it. Like, if you think I love DBT, like I love RO-DBT even more.
I think we literally had like a 2-hour conversation about RO-DBT when we met, and we were just like blah 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 the entire time.
Yeah, and so I think like when you think of an over control person, you would think of someone who's very it pays attention to details, people who are very organized, who are very like they show up at the airport early. They're not the people you see like yelling on the street. They're the people who are like helping planning the party, who stay afterwards to help clean up the party. Like very much there's like a lot of rules and
You're
detail and
describing me my
like
entire existence.
also maybe like more like an avoidant style. Like
yeah.
Maybe just kind of like they say, like I remember there's like all these memes on Instagram of like, you know that you're an overcontrol person if like this bothers you, and you would see like things like with like grammar mistakes and like just like things like little things like that, just things that are I think for me the equivalent of the biosocial theory for RO-DBT is that you are the kind of person who will automatically notice the thorn more than the roses.
Okay.
And then on top of that, you grew up in an environment that like really values like, you know, behaving properly and like being like an achiever and like that kind of environment, and that together will lead to like a more over control style. And so for me, for example, I looked at the difference between DBT, RO-DBT, and I realized that one piece that really stuck with me is that in DBT, they say that you're doing the best you can and you can always do better and like be more motivated to change. Well, in RO-DBT, they actually say that you need to let go of trying too hard,
to do better. Yeah.
You need to like chill out, like, you know? And so I think as much as trying to change and doing all the diary cards perfectly all the time and doing as many skills as you can, like sometimes you just have to know when to slow down. And so just things like that. And of course the part of RO, so radically open, for me is really cool because I think a lot of people in therapy, sometimes their therapist will say, you know, just be curious about things, like just be curious. And so the big thing for RO-DBT is self-inquiry. So in DBT, we will often be asked to regulate. So the therapist it's all about regulating emotions. Whereas in RO-DBT, you're actually really encouraged to be candid. You're encouraged to be spontaneous. You're encouraged to just be a little bit more like, I guess spontaneous would be the word. And just instead of, there's this really good quote in the RO-DBT manual, which I have read.
Of course.
Sometimes therapists will respond in a way that's like active listening, or they'll validate, or they'll regulate, like, you know, let's take a deep breath, or like, let's regulate, or like they'll do active listening. And so they're called like anti-self-inquiry responses. So instead of doing all of that like soothing and validating and stuff, the therapist, the RO-DBT therapist, will be more of a, you know, what can I learn from this? That's like their big tagline. Like, what is there to learn from this? And so I think for me, self-inquiry, which looks like, you know, it's basically like asking questions without needing an answer. You just keep asking questions, which is kind of weird at first, but it's relieving, you know? And I find that sometimes DBT, for people who are under control, like you do need to regulate your emotions and like contain them a little bit more. But as an over control person, I think I actually need to express them more. Like obviously within a healthy way. Yeah. But just very like, you know, be candid about it. You don't have to like be so like blank or numb or just non-expressive. You know, like over control people will be hard to impress, and they will often act like they have like a good poker face, basically. Right. And they kind of just be like, oh, you know, this doesn't affect me. They're very unfazed. But in reality, on the inside, you're like freaking out.
Totally. And then I feel like there's a lot of like shame spirals happening. Whereas the anger that's externalized is my belief is that it's often internalized anger, that you just are beating yourself up over and over and over and over and over again, because you're not perfect, because you're not whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I need it so bad. And I have to say, you would love it. I would love it. I know I would, based on our conversation before and our conversation today. And it's funny. So I haven't looked for a counselor in that area yet, but I did actually. Just so you know, I haven't told you this yet. Our conversation stimulated my thought of, you know what? I love my counselor. She's amazing. She's so great. I've worked with her for 9 years.
Oh my God.
This is a long ass time. She does kind of a generalist kind of stuff, but she does a lot of she knows a lot of her DBT. She knows a lot of her DBT, and she works with a lot of people with OCD, and that's been really helpful. She's like convinced I have OCD. It's kind of funny. She's like 100% sure. So anyways, our conversation back in Montreal a couple months ago actually encouraged me to tell her that I need a bit of a break, because I realized that I'm not getting where I need to go with her. Mm-hmm. And I adore her, and I don't want her to leave me, and I don't want to leave her. Yeah. But I just realized that there's more out there than what I'm getting in terms of the radically open piece. And I did ask her if she was aware of radically open, if she had any training. She said no, which is so fair. So I really appreciate I appreciate so much you and your passion for this, because it really did actually make a big difference in my own reflection on, am I getting what I need to be getting at this point in my recovery? Yeah. Around this over-controlled component, because I am incredibly over-controlled. Yeah. And it's distressing for me and those around me.
For sure. Yeah. I think over-controlled people, they work so hard to like the point of burnout. Like a lot of this.
For sure. We were literally just talking before this episode. Daphnée was like, so how often do you record? I was like, usually like at least 2 weekends a month. It takes me about 3-ish, maybe more hours per episode to edit. Yeah. And then I release an episode every week, and I work full time, and I run the support groups. And I was like, no, like that's not normal. Yeah. So I struggle a great deal with that over controlling. Yeah. So I decided to give it a break, and I have yet to take that next step of finding a new person, but I will, and this conversation will further encourage me to do that.
I think you might want to get the new book that's been published. I think you would like it. I think like just reading that would either solidify that like, okay, I need this, or maybe I want something different, like parts work. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the thing is I don't read. I want to read so bad. I want to be that person. My problem is I keep myself so busy that I don't have time. So like for me, like audiobooks are amazing because, and I haven't, to be fair, I haven't looked because I can do other things, which is part of the problem. I mean, in my last counseling conversation, my counselor was like, so you like listen to audiobooks all day, every day, or like podcasts all day, every day. You never let your brain pause. Whatever. She's like, so what would happen if you just like sat in silence? And I was like, oh, I just wouldn't. Yeah. And she's like, right. No, but like hypothetically, what would happen? And I was like, no, like I just wouldn't. And she was like, okay.
That's so funny.
That's a problem.
Oh my God. That's so funny. Because recently my RO-DBT therapist, that was the homework. Just sit in silence for 5 minutes. It was so hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think again, every single thing I've learned from you about RO-DBT, I'm like, yeah, this is like literally what I need. So
it's amazing. And I think what they've done with the skill is like, okay, and that's just like a bias thing. The skills are different. The skills are different, but they are based on the core DBT. So you still have the what skills, the how skills are just different. And so, for example, I think, okay, well, I guess I'm using a judgmental word, but like I think RO-DBT is quote better because, for example, you will have observe, describe, and participate. And in RO-DBT, you will have observe openly, you'll have describe with integrity, and participate without planning. And so for me, they like even like took it like a little step further. Another thing is like, instead of being non-judgmental, they'll just say awareness of harsh judgments. So they'll be it'll be like, they just like modify things differently.
Right. So you're not beating yourself up and going into a shame spiral about how judgmental you are. You're just acknowledging the judgment because that is still a like reasonable experience to have, essentially.
Yeah, and then you would learn from it. Yeah, you would practice self-inquiry. And then I think what I love is, instead of like, there's a lot of things like loving your perfectionist tendencies instead of trying to change them, or just kind of just learning. And they have skills. A lot of skills will be about social signaling, so how you signal to people. Like I remember feeling like when I read the RO-DBT manual, I felt so like called out all the time. And they gave like examples of like homework that a RO-DBT client would do. And I remember thinking, like, I cannot do those things. Like, I cannot, send emails with like intentional spelling mistakes, or really tell someone how I feel, or really like express my anger and like disagree strongly, like, or just a lot of different things that they would expose to, in the examples that they would give. I was like, that just sounds horrible.
No, literally the email one is, I'm like having a panic about the email one, and I'm not even being asked to do it. I'm like, I literally the first thing you said when you said the email thing, I said, okay, well, if I was to be assigned that, this is clearly I was not active listening, but I promise I was listening. I thought, oh my God, okay, so if I was assigned that homework, what would I do? First of all, I would panic. Second of all, I would find a person that I could email that it wouldn't matter if there was a spelling mistake, which completely defeats the purpose of that skill or that homework. And that was literally my thought process, because I was like, well, that's unacceptable to me to be able to be. Anyways, oh my God.
Yeah. I think for me, it would be things like, oh yeah, like they really encourage like reading like trashy literature. That's a judgment, but like reading.
No, like not educational.
Yeah, like don't
stuff,
read self-help. Like read a magazine that has no purpose. Like that's a lot of the thing. Is just there's an entire section on like the art of not being productive. Like just and it's just like I'm like, I need to be doing something 24/7. Another thing I really like about RO-DBT is how they focus on being open to new experiences. So I don't know if you're the kind of person who has like a very like a routine and everything is planned and everything is almost like predictable. And in RO-DBT, they'll often talk about the spice of life. You need to add spice to your life. And so I remember doing the homework would be things like, okay, well, why don't you, I don't know, let's say you're writing in a journal and you always use black ink. Well, why don't you use pink ink? Or like, why don't you just show up? Like, I remember one of the things that I did was that I went to Subway and I like had a different sandwich than I usually do. And it was just just like little things like that like you don't realize, but when they add up and when you try a new thing every day, like life just becomes more exciting. There's more of a thrilling element to trying new things, and you don't have to like obviously be open to everything. But for me, it was so nice to just be like, you know what? I'm going to go to my favorite restaurant and try another dish. Or, you know what? Instead of like going that way to work, I'm just going to take a little detour. And then, oh, maybe you notice some beautiful flowers. So just like being open to like changes like that. And so I remember doing those things in RO-DBT as well.
I mean, the emotional and physical reaction I'm having to these examples is enough for me to be like, girl, this is clearly something you need. And then I go into, and I'd be curious to know if you had the same thought when you first started RO-DBT of, yes, but perfectionism is where I thrive. Perfectionism is what makes me money. Perfectionism is what makes me like a good friend. Perfectionism is what makes me good at my job. And do I want to get rid of perfectionism, which is then, of course, a vicious cycle of perfectionism. But did you have those concerns?
I think that I was so over control that I was just so miserable that I really like the idea of having to just embrace your flaws and appreciate your imperfections. And that's actually something that my last therapy session, we were just talking about, like, how does imperfection show up in your life, which is a hard question, actually.
It is a hard question.
And then just kind of, just reflecting on what perfectionism is, how it's affecting my life, how it's affecting my relationships, and is there a way to find a way where you can just appreciate your imperfections instead of just trying to change them. Because once you stop trying to change things, you are like, because if you're a perfectionist and you try to be perfect at not being a perfectionist, like
you're just masking your perfectionism into a different thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know,
Daphnée,
I think you would love it.
I know, and I think I need it so bad. Yeah. Like, I hate this, but I think I need it so fucking bad because,
well, yeah,
just based on both conversations I've had with you, I'm like, Yeah, I need it so bad.
Well, and I guess I want to say, for those of you who don't know about RO-DBT, it is like, it has the same component. Like, it has a skills group, it has individual therapy, and I think skills coaching is like optional for RO-DBT, but it's still very much, you know, there's a diary card, and like it's the same, they have like the same concepts as well, you know. Like, for example, in DBT you'll have like, you know, the like irreverence versus the two communication styles.
Yeah, irreverence.
You remember
versus...
what they are? Irreverence versus just me. Anyway, so
I do. But anyways, I don't remember what it is.
So example, like, instead of like, they'll have like the irreverence piece, but in RO-DBT it's called playful irreverence.
Right.
So they'll just like modify things like that, but it's still very much like it is based on the DBT, right? It's just for a different group of people. And so as someone who kind of, most importantly, like, identified with having quiet BPD or an overcontrol style, RO-DBT was just the next step in my journey. And it's just, I think it's just going to get me to the point where it's like, it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to just laugh at yourself, and just not take life so seriously. Because I think that's one of the things I struggled a lot was, you know, everything was going to be the end of the world if this didn't work out, or it needed to be this certain way, and just being more flexible in like life, I guess. Yeah. Oh, and the people pleasing. Let's not forget the people pleasing.
Yeah.
part.
I feel like perfectionism and people pleasing are so hand in hand and so challenging. I mean, honestly, I'm so grateful for this conversation, and also so like in my head about how much I need to change but don't want to, that I'm like, I can't even think of a good next question.
Well, I guess I would say, like, for me, I don't know if you've thought about that doing with your therapist, but for me, what always helped me when I changed therapists was having this agreement that like I could come back. Like,
yes, and I did do that.
Like, I was like, okay, I'll give this therapy, this new approach a try, and in 6 months we'll reassess, so that there wasn't like a big ending, because my first abandonment is like,
yeah, totally. And I love my counselor. I just don't feel like we're getting anywhere. Yeah, exactly. No, I did do that. And that might have been a suggestion from you, actually, around, because I just said, you know what, I think I need a break. And I didn't even tell her what I needed a break from or why. I just said, I just need a break. And she said, okay, well, I'm here when you need me.
Yeah,
so
exactly. But for me, it always helped to have a session scheduled. Like, because I was like, okay, like, I need to know so that I don't feel abandoned, that this is just like convincing my brain that, like, you know, we will reassess. And most often it turns out fine. But I have this fear, like, therapeutic relationships for me are the relationship where the fears of abandonment show up the most. So it's actually quite distressing in some way. But another thing that I tell people to do or ask is for them to record their sessions. And that's been helpful to me. And I think, I mean, I personally think every therapist should be okay with it. I mean, I know a lot of them aren't. But yeah, I've had the privilege of having therapists who do allow recording. And I always say that Marshall Linehan encouraged that. So let's just, and I actually did find out that in RO-DBT as well, it is something that you can do. So I have all my therapy sessions recorded, and they are so precious to me.
Yeah, you said you even listened to them back, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And especially when you listen back to your sessions where you like accomplish something, when you're not feeling great in the moment. And then, you know, I'm hearing myself like having all these gains, and it's like, oh, okay, I can do it.
Just a reminder of what you say. Like, I think I need to take more notes in therapy, because when I do, I find I come back to it. I sometimes do, sometimes don't. But I think if I took good notes, I would get a lot further.
Yeah.
So is there anything we haven't talked about that you really, really wanted to talk about today?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I guess I would just say that therapy is like my favorite part of the week. And I know that there's a lot of people who have bad experiences in therapy. And so I feel for those people, because I know it can be helpful. And obviously the idea of people not being able to afford to see somebody that they need and stuff, like, it really, it really hurts my heart. But I would say that therapy is like, I could talk about it all day. And I think I have decided, I don't know if I told you this, but I would like to go back to grad school, to go to grad school, not back to grad school, go to grad school. And I think I'm thinking I would like to be a school counselor. So I think
that makes so much
therapy
sense.
is something that I'm just so passionate about. And honestly, like you said, we could talk about it all day.
Truly. And if I end up doing RO-DBT, you know that you're going to have to come back and we're going to have to talk about all of it, because I'm going to have so many thoughts and questions for you.
Yeah. Honestly, I love it so much. And it's funny because my last therapy homework, this was actually this past week, where in Montreal there's a silent book club. Have you ever heard of a silent book club?
No.
It's basically where you like go and socialize, and then you have an hour of silent reading. Like everyone brings their own book, and then there's a socialization part after. And I was telling my therapist how I had read the first Twilight book, and it was like super embarrassing for me. And so she dared me to go to silent book club with Twilight, to go read Twilight. And I was like, oh my God, this seems so embarrassing. But I could not get my hands on the Twilight book in time. However, I thought about it. Like, I was like, maybe I could just bring the RO-DBT manual. And then I remember I texted her and I was like, you know what? I think as long as I don't bring something that's like self-help or like psychoeducation, I think I'll be fine. So I actually did, force myself to bring something that was like purely leisure.
Yeah, that's good. I was like, I thought you were going to say that the ROT-DBT manual wasn't self-help or what did you say? Psychoeducational. And I was like, no, that's literally what that is. I was like, don't trick yourself. That's cool though. I've never heard of that.
I think it's like both Marshall Linehan's original manual and the RO-DBT manual. Why I read them is mostly for validation. I think maybe some people like read it because, they're a therapist and they need to know the approach. Like for me, like this psychology part and like that's all cool. Like, but for me, it's when they say things like, overcontrol people will often say they are fine when they are not fine. Or they will say like people with BPD will experience this or that. And that, when I relate to that, it's just like the best feeling in the world. Like feeling like this author or whoever wrote the book or whoever is behind these ideas just like really gets me. And I think that's why I end up reading therapy manuals.
Hey, more power to you. That's awesome. Yeah. That'll get you further ahead in when you do go back to grad school.
Yeah, RO-DBT is awesome. I would say, I think from our conversation, I think you would love it as well. And at the very least, it's something new. Like you would have something new to dive into. Because like you said, you've been doing DBT for a while and you know all the skills. And I think at times, it's not that it doesn't get boring. It's just that it's like something new can be something exciting as well. Add the spice to life.
Spice of life. Yeah. So my final question is always, what's your favorite part of having borderline personality disorder?
Okay, so I've listened to the podcast before and you always ask that question. And I think for me, it's just like, as much as the emotions are like painful and hurtful and are the bane of my existence sometimes, I think for me the best part is just like having intense emotions can be a beautiful thing, and I think lots of people relate to that as well. The joy that I feel when I feel joy, or even just I feel like you when you have intense emotion, I think you experience life in a more not like fuller way, but just in a different way. And I think that I would rather than have that than be like a robot and not have that many feelings, I think.
Great. Awesome. Well, Daphnée, thank you so much. I knew this was going to be super fun. I'm so glad. And it was funny. I told my husband's like, who are you recording with today? And I was like, oh, do you remember Daphnée? Because we met, he picked me up from the coffee shop and he was like, oh my God, she's coming on. She said she wasn't like sure about coming on. I was like, yeah. So I'm so happy that you're here. And thank you so much for not only coming on the podcast, obviously, but meeting me for coffee and then just like sharing with me your passion for RO-DBT, because I truly think it will change my life once I get over myself enough to go.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me on the podcast.
Of course, anytime. I'm sure you'll be back.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to the Superfeeler podcast. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded territory of the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations. If you'd like to learn more about the Superfeeler podcast, share your story, or participate in the Superfeelers Club, which is our peer support group, it's totally free, virtual, and open to anyone who experiences intense emotions or has borderline personality disorder, please check out the link in our show notes or go to laurieedmondson.com. If you would like to support the show, we would very much appreciate it. There's an option to do monthly small donations at whatever denomination you'd like, patreon.com/superfeeler, or again in the notes below. Thanks again and have a great day.